everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Summer. I am so excited for today's video. We're going to be doing another haircut tutorial, so let's get started. All right, so I am going to be taking this lovely lady here and treating her as if she were a client that came in and hadn't had their hair cut in quite a long time. So they've lost any sort of nice flow or shape to the hair. They know they desperately need a haircut. They know their ends are bad, but they also want to leave as much length as possible. This is a very common scenario you will see in salon. So I'm going to be going over with you guys what I recommend with my clients in this scenario, how much length I advise removing, and how I like to add in some medium layers to give it some shape. Okay, so before I get her hair sprayed down for actual cutting, what I like to do is take all the hair and place it directly behind the shoulders so all of the hair is pulled back away from the face, so that way you really get to see all the hair and how it's laying when pulled back. You can really see the weight distribution. So what I will do is just take my comb and really comb everything down to look and see how the hair is laying and in the shape that I'm gonna cut. Usually some clients are really willing to part with the length when they need it and their ends are thinned out or it's dead hair. Other people are a little bit harder to let go of it, so just you'll figure that out really quickly in your consultation, how your client feels about that. So I will just go in and comb the hair down like I said, and I can see the shape that's forming here. We have a little bit more sparsity here. She's got a hole going on. It's much thinner right in here. But in the middle section, it's not quite as bad. The ends are not too crazy, and on this other side, it's not as severe. So usually to keep the length, I'm gonna create a little bit of roundness with the shape. There's no need for me to go in and cut all the way even up at this top little hole that she's got going and all the way across, because we have enough thickness remaining right in here, and you can easily round out your corners to match it. So as long as the client's okay with a little bit of roundness and shape, do that. If they're okay with losing it, you can always go straight across. That's personal preference. And if your client is on the fence about losing too much length, you can cut a little bit at first and show them what it looks like. So usually when that is the case, I'm just gonna come in right along this middle area and snip. So it takes out some of the length here, but it's not really taking care of our problem over here. This is a problem that's either gotta be cut out or grow out, and if it is dead split ends, you need to honestly just cut it out, because they're just gonna continue to split up the hair strands, creating the same problem over and over again until they're cut out. So now that we've cut the bare minimum, I would go back in and explain to my client what I just told you guys. And what I'm gonna do is just round this out. So I know I need to take this corner up. So I'm gonna take my comb and kind of mark my guide and cut. And the hair doesn't need to be sectioned for this part because you're gonna go in and refine anyways, but this kind of just allows you to get the bulk out with seeing how it lays, so that way you have a little bit more control when you go to section. So I have that little bit of angle here, and I'm just gonna come up, which we're still cutting out this little bit here in the middle that needs to be cut. We're just gonna go straight across. I'm gonna come to my corner here. And then again, I'm gonna angle my comb so I have control and cut. So that already is looking a lot better. Again, she's got still this little gap here that I'm gonna come back in and worry about a little bit more when I'm doing my sectioning. Usually I find right at the corners, sometimes you can get away with leaving them, especially if your client wears their hair forward. It sort of takes that out. So that's why I like to leave it instead of just immediately going in and cutting it. We've evened it out a lot more, and it's already looking fuller. And then like I said, we're gonna, when we section off to do our actual haircut, you'll refine more in areas. So I'm gonna get her sprayed down and then we'll get to cutting. Okay, so now we've got her hair nice and damp, ready to cut, ready to section off. I am cutting her on a middle part. If your client wears their hair on the side, just simply, you would cut the hair to where their part line is and do all the same steps I'm doing. So I just come in, go right down the side here, the tip of the ear. If you've watched any of my cutting videos, you know this is how I always start off my sectioning. And sectioning is very important. You don't want to skimp on it. You want to make sure you have nice, clean, even sections, keeping the hair that you are not cutting out of the way. All right, and now we're going to come to the back. Okay, so now that we have the sides done, we're moving on to the back, and you can part the back one of two ways. You can either come right down the middle of the hair and take two subsections that way, clipping these up, or you can just take your clips and clip up the two subsections without parting in the middle. I always do two sections though of clips. It just keeps it a lot more cleaner and neat. Okay, so I'm gonna have her look down ever so slightly. And then you wanna remember, we are again creating a little bit of that roundness because of that hole that was on this side. So instead of cutting straight across, I am gonna slightly round at the corners while cutting so it's not a straight hard line. All right, so we've cut the first mark right here in the middle, and we're gonna come into the sides. And then as I reach this corner, I'm just gonna slightly kind of twist my hands. So that way you're getting a little bit more roundness rather than just straight across. Again, coming to this corner, I'm gonna have my fingers more so at an angle. And then what you can do is you can bring your two corners here, pull them together, make sure that they're lining up nice. And then we're gonna take our next section. I don't like to go over more than an inch unless the client has ridiculously fine hair, fine or thin hair, stick within that inch mark. Again, round that out. You can see your guide. So the nice thing I like about cutting the hair prior to when you get it wet is that you don't have to do quite as many sections for this back perimeter cutting because you've already kind of cut the bulk of it. You're just going in and refining any hairs that need to come off. Let down this last top section because the majority of that is going to be cut into layers anyways, but we're going to just check it. I've just got these little baby hairs. All right, and then now that you have the perimeter cut, I like to kind of just pull down, make sure it's lining up okay, and then we're gonna move into our layers for the back. And then I'm gonna have her look upright for that. All right, so now we have the perimeter cut. We're gonna move into the layers. I'm gonna be doing more of a medium type layer, nothing too long or too short. One thing with clients who tend to wait a long time in between appointments is they like low maintenance, they like something simple. So I feel like if you do too many layers, it's a little too crazy for them, but if it's too long, it ends up weighing them down as their hair grows out and they're waiting too long to come back in salon. If somebody has very curly or wavy hair, then you can get away with doing shorter layers because it's gonna spring up in that body. And if you leave them too long though, you're gonna get more of that triangle shape going that you want to avoid. So curly, wavy hair and they leave it that way, do definitely medium layers to shorter layers. And somebody with longer, straight hair, medium layers is usually about your best bet. So to come in, we're gonna come right through this middle and I'm gonna push this hair forward so it's out of the way. And then I'm gonna do the same over here, pushing it forward out of the way. Fine side of your comb. I always say this in all of my tutorials for cutting, especially when layering. I like the fine side to come in at the bottom so it's really getting some good tension. You're gonna come straight out. You're letting your perimeter fall some, and then we're just gonna cut. Flip that fine side of your comb back over so you're getting nice tension. Come out, cut. So if you want to see how I do my long layers, I have a video of that. And then I also have another video where I do the shorter layers so you can see how I'm changing the angle with my hands. So this is kind of right in the middle of a short layered and long layered. So we have our shortest layer is this top piece here, coming right down. It curves nicely around the occipital bone, but you still have your length throughout the ends. And we're just gonna continue going around the head. Remember, flip that comb when moving up your section. The finer side of your comb is gonna pull a little bit tighter, obviously, than the wider end. And then we're gonna come on over to the other side, repeating the same steps. So I'm gonna come back to my middle guide here, clip this hair back out of the way or comb it forward, whichever you're comfortable with. Then take my next piece on this other side. Find side of your comb. Pull out. We've got actually some of our old guide left. One little hair is in this section. All right, let's grab that next piece. There we go. Now on a side with a client, like let's say this one, she had that little hole on this side of the hair. When you go to layer it, you might notice that more so, that you don't notice quite as much hair coming out. That is why, if they have a hole. All right, so now that I have her back layers done, what I'm gonna do is come in and go right across her top layer to make sure that that is even. Just gonna come over with my comb, fingers, comb, or clip. We're just gonna bring everything straight up with the fine side of our comb and then nip any little hairs that might be poking out. But she lined up really nice. So let that out, and then we're gonna move on to our first side. Okay, so we're gonna move into our sides, and I'm gonna take a subsection sticking in that 1-inch parting size. Again, sectioning is key. I don't like to ever just drop this side all the way down and cut. That's how you end up taking a little too much length. All right, so we're gonna come in from this corner piece, because remember, we slightly rounded up. And cut. Take our next section. So one thing I tend to notice with clients who fall into this category of they haven't been in the salon in forever and they're just like, my hair looks horrible, I'm ready for a change, I want a makeover. In my younger days, I would be all like, oh, this is so exciting. And especially if they didn't have pictures or I didn't show them pictures, I would end up in my mind thinking that they wanted this huge drastic change, and then they wouldn't be happy. A lot of times people who go forever between salon visits, when they come in and they're so unhappy with how their hair looks, most times they just need a good, clean haircut, nothing even crazy, and that alone to them is gonna make them feel like they've had this big, complete makeover. So really be thorough in your consultation. Ask them for pictures. If they don't have pictures, pull out your phone or tablet, show them pictures of different hairstyles. So that way in your mind, if you're thinking like, oh, they wanna see all this layers and all these movements, and they don't really wanna see that, they're not gonna be happy. And then that's how a lot of times I think clients end up saying that they've never had a good haircut. It's kind of all comes together in your consultation, so really be thorough in that. And like I said, most times they just need a good cleanup and good haircut because it's been forever since they've been in. Okay, so now that we have cut that perimeter, I'm gonna wait to add her layers on this side and cut her other side before moving on to that. So I'm just gonna spin her. take that next section. And see, now we're kind of coming to this little weird hole on her in here that I'm gonna leave alone until we get it styled to see how it's laying. Like I said, a lot of times if a client is wearing their hair forward, you don't notice it as much. But because we have that hole, I'm gonna base my guide off of this longer piece in her back corner so we're not losing as much length at the front. So again, we're gonna come in fine side teeth of our comb. I see her shorter pieces in here, but I'm basing it off of this guide. So I'm gonna come down and cut. Bring our next section. Again, pulling back from this back corner. Cut. So remember to look out for that hole, and you're going to finish this section out same as we did on the other side. So now to move on to her layers on the side. I don't like to do a ton of layers on the side, even though we're doing medium layers per se, just because I like to see how it lays when it's dry. But to do it, I'm gonna do it how I would do like a long layered side layers, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna come in with a parting, and I'm gonna take everything up. So I'm gonna come up, pull everything up and back. And again, remember we have a little bit of a hole here where it gets thinner. So I see a guide right in here, but I don't want to cut it that short. I can see a little bit of the hair sticking up. So I'm gonna pull up, really over direct my fingers up, and then cut straight up. Gonna pull again from the front, go all the way back, using that fine side of your comb, all the way back and up, twisting my fingers, and cut. And then grab your final piece in the front, up, and cut. Usually that very last front piece, you don't have quite as much to nip. And then I'm gonna repeat the same step on the other side. Okay, so we're gonna take our next side over here, switching to the other side. Again, fine side of your comb, go up, all the way back, twisting those arms, your fingers, and cut. Our last piece, all the way back, up, and you just have just a tiny bit. All right, so we're gonna comb out everything down. And then now I'm gonna just do some slight face framing. So again, I personally don't like a ton of layers on the side or a really heavy face framing. Figure that out in your consultation with your client. Again, this is where pictures come in handy. But we're just gonna take a parting right in front of the ear here, and I'm gonna push all this hair back. Do the same on this other side. And then I'm gonna leave her face framing longer than her chin, so that way the client can get it pulled back. And if they want it shorter, you can obviously go shorter with it. But for this purpose and this client, we're leaving it on the longer side. So we're gonna take our hair here, bring your hands and fingers at an angle so you're already gonna be in that position with your comb and scissors. Take your scissors at an angle, and we're gonna sliver and do it more at a straight down angle rather than back. And then after we get it dry, we may adjust this, but I always like to play on the safe side with my face framing and do a little less at first, and I can always go back in and cut more. It's better to be on the safe side rather than sorry side. gonna just line up this other side. I'm gonna come and meet them in the middle so I can see my guide here a little bit. Angle my scissors, come up and meet it. I'm actually gonna clip this out of the way so she's not getting in my hair over here. So we're gonna come down. Normally I would stand directly in front of the client, but I'm trying to stand to the side so you can see. Angle those fingers, start at your longest point, and come up. And then normally I would stand right in front of the client and bring the pieces forward so that way you can make sure they're lining up. Again, we did it really soft and subtle, so usually there's not too much of a discrepancy, but to do that you would just come in. I stand in front of the client. For this, I'll stand behind you guys. And you're just gonna bring it forward and make sure it's lining up, and then you would go in and critique where you might need to even it out. So I'm gonna go ahead and get her dried and styled, and then I will show you guys what it looks like, and then we'll see if we need to do any dry cutting, see how this back section is lining up, especially with the hole that we have going in here, and see if we need to maybe clean up the perimeter a little bit more or not. So we'll be right back. Okay, so I have finished blow drying her and getting her styled. I'm gonna turn her now so you guys can see what it looks like in the back. Okay, so I've got her turned now so you can see this back section. It looks so much more thick and full. Now, remember we did have this little bit of a hole here. So it is slightly maybe thinner and shorter right here, but it really blends in really nice. You've got all that dead hair off. You've still got some length, and you've got nice layers going throughout the hair, creating some movement and shape. And then from the side view, you can see a little bit here where it curves down. So I would make note with my client whether or not they want that evened off. You can either up the back then, but when the hair is pushed forward, you don't really notice it as much. So that's why I like to leave it until the very end. And then I wanna show you guys, sometimes I feel like the top layer gets a little heavy. So in order to thin that out, I will either point cut or use my thinning shears, which at that point I would just come in at this top layer and just ever so slightly point cut into it to soften it. Or you can as well use your texturizing shears, and I kind of do the same thing, coming in with an angle going and then just softening it if you feel like it's a little bit bulky. But I'm happy with how it turned out. I'm gonna show you guys one more time with it down. Much cleaner looking, much softer. You've got the nice curve here with a little bit of length left in the front, or in the middle, I should say. All right, and here we have our front view. Again, I like to leave the pieces around the face a little bit longer. You can shorten them up if your client prefers that, but it just blends so nicely. Very happy with it. All right, so here we have our finished look. We've got the ends cleaned up nicely. They look much more full, like I said. We've got some nice layers in there to give some nice shape and movement without it being too overwhelming. Key points: pull all that hair back over the shoulders so you can really see well how much length you may need to remove. Angle or curve your cutting if you need to over cutting straight across, so that way you can keep as much length as possible in the middle. Remember, you can always start by cutting less first, show your client, and then go from there. As always, sectioning is key. Do not take shortcuts with it. And most important, really talk with your clients about what their hair routine is as far as styling, if you feel that they might want shorter or longer layers than what I did today. Pictures from you or your client are your best bet at making that decision. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next week.